5 minutes ago, a quiet storage facility in California unlocked a unit tied to Meghan Markle. What they found inside was not memorabilia, not furniture, but evidence of a plan years in the making. And tonight, the monarchy is bracing for the fallout. The opening of the unit and the California shockwave. Just after 6:30 a.m. on November 29, while the California sky was still soft with its muted winter dawn, a single phone call set off a cascade of consequences neither coast was prepared to absorb. The call came from a quiet storage facility tucked along a narrow road near Montecito. The kind of place designed to be unnoticed, unhyped, and barely occupied except by retirees downsizing or families seeking temporary space between homes. But that morning, it was not anonymity that defined the building. It was a revelation. The facility manager, a man who had worked there for more than 20 years and claimed he had never once dealt with anything resembling scandal, phoned the legal representative overseeing a court-requested inventory check. The voice on the line was clipped, tense, and unusually alert for someone accustomed to mundane property lists. "We open the unit and you need to come now." Within 40 minutes, two unmarked vehicles pulled into the lot, their tires crunching over gravel, still wet from the coastal fog. A third vehicle arrived quietly with tinted windows and a single passenger inside. Someone not identified by name, but later confirmed to have ties to a high-level private security firm frequently engaged by celebrity clients. The storage unit in question had been rented nearly 4 years earlier, shortly after Meghan and Harry relocated to California. It had remained inactive for months at a time, accessed only by individuals who appeared irregularly, usually in the late evening or early morning hours. Nothing about it had raised suspicion publicly. California storage units hold millions of forgotten objects. But inside palace circles, the existence of that unit had been an open secret and a growing concern. Because from the earliest days of the Sussex departure, there had been rumors persistent, quiet, but never fully dismissed that Meghan had kept certain materials from her time within the royal household. Not just personal belongings but items that carried weight, items that might, under the right or wrong circumstances, rewrite narratives, reignite scandals, or expose long-concealed tensions. And now, as the metal door rolled upward and the cold fluorescent light spilled across the concrete floor, the truth no longer lived in rumor. It lived in boxes, stacks of them, heavy ones, labeled ones, unlabeled ones, and at least 5 marked in thick black pen with dates stretching back to 2018, 2019, and the early months of 2020, the period when everything changed for the Sussexes and for the monarchy itself. By 7:00 a.m., word had begun to spread, not to the public, not yet, but through private channels that carried more influence than any broadcast network. Calls moved quietly from Los Angeles to New York, from Washington to London, and inside the Royal Communications Office at Buckingham Palace. A senior advisor reviewing morning reports paused when he saw the flagged alert. The California unit opened. Preliminary contents significant. The palace rarely used that word unless the implications were profound. Within 30 minutes, the message reached Kensington Palace, where William's private secretary read it twice, then forwarded it directly to the Prince of Wales, who was preparing for a scheduled briefing. William, upon seeing the subject line, stopped mid-page, his expression tightening into the familiar seriousness that had come to define his role during moments of unexpected turbulence. He did not ask what was found. He asked how long they had until someone else did. Across Buckingham Palace, another reaction unfolded, quieter, heavier. King Charles had just finished a round of early morning updates when his senior advisor approached him with the news. Charles, weary from weeks of strained internal dynamics, closed his eyes briefly before responding. "What did they find?" His advisor hesitated. "We do not know yet, sir, but there were documents and recordings." Recordings. The word echoed through the room like a warning bell. At nearly the same moment, nearly 5,000 miles away in the Montecito foothills, Meghan herself was informed. She received the message while standing beside a kitchen window overlooking the hazy morning landscape. The reaction was immediate. A stillness, a deep inhalation, and a single whispered response already. Because despite the public image that she and Harry projected, controlled, polished, distant from the old world, they knew this moment could come. They had known since the day they left Britain, and they had prepared for it. But nothing prepared them for how fast it would move. Thus mid-morning, the boxes were being photographed, logged, and sealed for examination. The individuals overseeing the process moved with quiet urgency, aware that every item they handled had the potential to reshape not only the Sussex narrative, but the monarchy's stability. They opened the first box at 9:22 a.m. What they found inside changed everything. The first box opens and the palace reacts. They opened the first box at exactly 9:22 a.m. Pacific time. No one in the room spoke as the lid lifted. Even the hum of the overhead light seemed to dim, as though the unit itself recognized the gravity of what was being revealed. Inside lay a stack of leather-bound journals, neatly arranged, each wrapped in a thin protective layer of archival paper. On the topmost journal, in Meghan's unmistakable looping handwriting, were the words "Winter Notes." 2019, the year the fractures began to show. The year internal conversations turned sharp. The year the monarchy shifted beneath everyone's feet. The inventory team exchanged looks, measured, cautious, professional. But beneath the surface, it was clear they understood what journals from that period could contain. Personal reflections, sensitive accounts, descriptions of meetings that had been reduced publicly to two-line palace statements. Whatever lay inside these pages, someone had once believed they were worth preserving far from British soil. The second layer of the box revealed something even more startling. Flash drives. Not one, not two, but an entire row of them, each labeled only with a month and a year. No descriptions, no summaries, no hints. January 2020, February 2020, March 2020, the months leading to the infamous announcement, the months when Harry and Meghan were negotiating their exit, the months when palace staff whispered in corridors, when William and Harry were said to be barely speaking, when Charles was privately urging unity even as the institution braced for impact. Beside the drives were several sealed envelopes, each embossed with the royal crest, a detail that chilled the room instantly because envelopes bearing that crest were not given lightly and they were never meant to sit in a California storage unit. One envelope bore a handwritten note, "Private correspondence, keep secure." That phrase alone would have triggered alarm anywhere inside a storage unit. It was a crisis. The team lead made the call within seconds. This was no longer simply an inventory check. This was a high-level breach. Within minutes, the information reached London again, this time in sharper detail. The first report had used the word significant. The second used a different one, urgent. By early afternoon in the United Kingdom, the palace's crisis communications group had assembled in their underground briefing room, a space used only when the stakes were too high for standard protocol. Phones were swept, devices were removed, the doors locked. The head of communications read aloud the preliminary summary transmitted from California. When he reached the line referencing leather-bound journals and royal crest envelopes, the room fell utterly silent. A senior advisor broke the silence with the question everyone feared. What if these contain private conversations or internal disputes or disagreements we never addressed publicly? Another advisor responded, then we will face a narrative we cannot control. That was the nightmare scenario because since the day Meghan had left Britain, the palace had relied on silent strategic silence, dignified silence, the kind the monarchy had always wielded to survive storms. But journals and recordings, those could unmake silence in an instant, and no one felt the tremor more deeply than Princess Anne. When briefed later that afternoon, and listened without interruption, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. But those who knew her well recognized the subtle tightening of her jaw, a sign of rising irritation, not at Meghan specifically, but at the chaos this moment could unleash, and had weathered decades of royal upheaval. She had watched scandals flare, fade, and reappear. She had seen how swiftly a private story became a public problem. But these private documents stored abroad were something entirely different. It suggested intention, planning, a long game. Her first question was sharp. Does Harry know? The advisor hesitated. We believe he will shortly. And exhaled slowly as if bracing herself. Meanwhile, across London, William received the briefing in muted tones. He did not raise his voice. He did not express shock. But his private secretary noted the way his gaze shifted, not angry but calculating. Because William understood the truth better than most. If journals from those final months contained even a fraction of the tension rumored privately, the monarchy was about to enter a new winter, and the storm would not wait for them to prepare. The journals, the drives, and the secrets. No one expected. By mid-morning in California, the second box was opened. If the first box had been concerning, this one was explosive. Inside it lay folders, each organized with meticulous care. Meghan's team had always been known for its precision, but this was something beyond ordinary archiving. These were curated records, deliberate, intentional, and immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with the internal machinery of the royal household. Because these were not simply Meghan's belongings. These were palace documents, copies of schedules, meeting summaries, and internal briefing notes, some stamped private, some marked confidential, and others bearing initials of senior household officials. The inventory team paused, unsure whether to continue without additional authorization. But the instructions from the supervising attorney were clear. Catalog everything. Photograph everything. Do not interpret. Do not speculate. Still, speculation seeped into the air like fog. One folder stood out before any were even opened. A thick packet labeled Commonwealth Discussions Winter 2019. Personal annotations included personal annotations. That phrase was enough to send a ripple of alarm back through the secure channels to London, because winter 2019 was one of the tensest periods of the Sussex era, one filled with private negotiations, shifting expectations and disagreements over Meghan's emerging role within the Commonwealth project. It was a project the palace had hoped she would champion. A way of integrating her heritage, her global appeal, and the monarchy's long-term vision. But here was the uncomfortable truth the public never fully saw. Behind closed doors, the initiative became a point of friction, not unity. And now in a California storage unit sat records from those conversations that might reveal who supported Meghan's ideas, who resisted them, and who attempted to reshape the narrative entirely. When the supervising attorney saw the Commonwealth folder, he lifted it gently as though afraid it might ignite. He placed it into a secure case separate from the others. But what truly changed the atmosphere was the discovery beneath the folders. A slim black recording device. Not new, not cutting edge. An older model, one easy to conceal, easy to overlook, easy to underestimate. It had been stored without batteries, wrapped carefully in cloth, and placed beside a set of labeled USB drives that the team had not yet processed.